slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that. Spitting slow, spitting fast, I could roast, I could gas. Think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past. And the pettiness, a reflection of the emptiness. Hilarious, you think you're worth my time, you're delirious. Mysterious, because you hide behind a fake exterior. Inferior, you know I'll always be a bit superior. Get off of me, this ain't no humble brag. I want you to hear words, you can say them back. I want you to feel free from the chains at last, and to believe in what you got, it was built to last, yeah.
Now that I've been put through hell, I never got anyone's help. I had to do it all myself.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Gonna learn the consequence of being incompetent. Mental health is confidence, dreams and some honestness. I'm not here to save the day, that's for you to take away. I could play a million mind games, but instead I say something not illogical, something that is topical. Rub it on and watch it go, make yourself unstoppable. Dreams are irresponsible, but they're always possible. If you just believe, you could be so remarkable.
Thoughts in my head, a collage and they spread. I'll be great one day, going off of my meds. No, I'm not giving up, no, I'm not giving in. I will make it to the top, taking off in the wind. I gotta make it, I'm saving every day to taste it. I'm patient, but my mind, it can hardly take it. I'm chasing a dream that I've had for several ages. A vacant, modern kingdom for the taking.
Now that I've been put through hell, I never got anyone's help. I had to do it all myself.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.
How did 900 Shahab-3 missiles penetrate the most sophisticated naval air defense envelope ever assembled and reach a nuclear-powered supercarrier? What does the stranding of 8,400 American military personnel in the Northern Arabian Sea actually mean for American force projection credibility across every theater where we currently have commitments? Why did Washington know this threat was real, ignore the assessments that told them it was real, and deploy the Ronald Reagan into an operating environment where Iranian anti-ship doctrine had been clearly signaled for years? And what happens now to the sailors stranded at sea, to Israel waiting for the air support that will not be coming, and to a global order that just watched the symbol of American military dominance take fire in the Arabian Sea? If you're watching this channel for the first time, this is what we do here. No narrative management, no talking points, just the military and strategic reality as clearly and honestly as I can deliver it. Hit subscribe and like this video right now so the algorithm puts this analysis in front of the people who need to hear it. And leave your thoughts in the comments. I read them. The conversation happening in this community is one of the most honest assessments of what's actually going on in the world that you will find anywhere. Now let's get into it. Part 1, the strike. How 900 Shahab-3s did what no one believed possible. I want to start with the operational picture. because before we can talk about what this means strategically, we need to understand precisely what happened tactically. And what happened tactically is a masterclass in the application of mass, timing, and deliberate exploitation of known defensive limitations. This was not improvised. This was not a desperate lunge. This was a carefully engineered operational plan executed with a discipline and precision that any honest military professional has to acknowledge, regardless of where their political sympathies lie. The Ronald Reagan was operating in the northern Arabian Sea, approximately 340 nautical miles southeast of the Strait of Hormuz, in a position that had been its standard operating station for the preceding 11 days. That positioning was not secret. Carrier strike group operating positions in the Gulf region are tracked continuously by commercial satellite services, by the Maritime Automatic Identification System Network, and by the extensive Iranian intelligence collection apparatus that has spent decades mapping American naval operating patterns in this theater. The Ronald Reagan's position on the night of the strike was known to Iranian planners with a precision that our own force protection assessment apparently did not adequately weight. The strike began at 11:47 p.m. local time with the simultaneous activation of launch batteries across 6 provinces in western and southwestern Iran. The Shahab-3 is a medium-range ballistic missile, a system that has been in Iranian inventory for over 2 decades, and that American intelligence has consistently characterized as a relatively unsophisticated weapon by current standards. That characterization was accurate as a description of the baseline system. It was catastrophically wrong as a description of what Iran has done with that baseline over the intervening years. The Shahab-3 variants deployed in this strike were not the systems that American threat assessments were written against. The modifications incorporated into the operational rounds, aerodynamic refinements to the re-entry vehicle, updated inertial navigation with GPS-independent terminal correction, and a terminal maneuvering capability added to a subset of the rounds specifically to defeat intercept solutions represent an evolutionary development program that proceeded continuously and quietly while Western analysts were focused on Iran's more headline-generating hypersonic developments. The Shahab-3 was never retired from Iranian inventory because it was never replaced. It was improved continuously in the specific ways that maximized its utility against exactly the kind of naval target that the Ronald Reagan represents. 900 rounds were launched in a sequenced salvo architecture designed with a specific operational objective to guarantee that the Ronald Reagan's defensive envelope was presented with more simultaneous intercept requirements than it could physically process, regardless of the technical performance of any individual interceptor system. Let me translate that into operational terms that make the mathematics clear. The Ronald Reagan Strike Group's primary ballistic missile defense capability resides in its escort vessels, specifically the 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and 1 Ticonderoga-class cruiser assigned to the group, each equipped with the Spy-1 radar and Standard Missile 3 interceptors in a standard operational configuration. Each of these vessels can simultaneously engage a defined number of ballistic missile threats within its radar and fire control envelope. The combined simultaneous engagement capacity of the 3 escorts, operating in their most optimistic operational configuration, represents a fraction of the 900 inbound tracks that Iranian launch batteries placed in the air within a window of approximately 8 minutes. 8 minutes. That is the time between the first detected launch signatures and the first impacts on the carrier's defensive perimeter in those 8 minutes. The strike group's tactical action officers were looking at a radar picture that no training scenario had ever prepared them for. The Spy 1 radar systems were functioning. The SM-3 interceptors were functioning. The Aegis battle management software was functioning. None of that mattered. The system was not designed to handle 900 simultaneous tracks. The engagement queues overflowed. The intercept solutions that were computed could not all be executed within the available time. And the rounds that were not engaged, the majority of the 900 continued on their ballistic trajectories toward a hole that was 333 meters long and impossible to miss at the accuracy levels. The improved Shahab-3 demonstrated on this night. The first impacts on the Ronald Reagan were recorded at 11:55 p.m. The carrier absorbed 17 direct hits over a period of 11 minutes before the salvo was exhausted. The impacts were distributed across the flight deck, the island superstructure, the engineering spaces, and the hangar deck in a pattern consistent with a deliberate aim point distribution designed to maximize simultaneous damage to propulsion, aviation operations, command and control, and damage control capability. This was not random dispersion from inaccurate weapons. This was a targeting solution applied to a specific vessel by weapons accurate enough to implement it. The Ronald Reagan is not sunk. I want to be precise about that because the information environment around this event is already generating claims that exceed what the confirmed damage picture supports. The carrier is afloat. It is listing approximately 12 degrees to starboard, indicating significant flooding in at least 2 below waterline compartments. Its propulsion plant is non-operational. The ship is not moving under its own power. Its flight deck has sustained damage that renders fixed-wing aviation operations impossible. Its island superstructure has absorbed impacts that have degraded command and control functionality. And its 8,400 personnel, the carrier's own complement, plus the air wing and strike group staff, are aboard a vessel that is neither combat capable nor capable of independent navigation to safety. That is the operational reality that the Pentagon's carefully worded statements are currently attempting to communicate without fully communicating. The Ronald Reagan is a mission-killed asset. Whether it is eventually recovered, towed to port, and repaired over a period of years is a question that belongs to the future. What belongs to the present is the fact that the most powerful naval vessel the United States has ever deployed to this theater is sitting dead in the water in the northern Arabian Sea, and the 8,400 Americans aboard it are dependent on rescue and support operations that must now be conducted in a threat environment that just demonstrated its capacity to defeat the best air defense coverage the U.S. Navy can generate. Part 2, the Shahab. 3, evolution, 30 years of quiet improvement. I want to spend some time on the weapon itself because the instinct of Western analysts and media is going to be to dismiss the Shahab-3 as an outdated system that got lucky. And I need to explain precisely why that instinct is wrong and why accepting it will guarantee that this kind of surprise happens again. The Shahab-3 entered Iranian service in the late 1990s as a derivative of the North Korean Nodong missile, which itself traces its lineage to Soviet R-17 technology. In its original configuration, it was a liquid-fueled, medium-range ballistic missile with a range of approximately 1,300 kilometers, a circular error probable of several hundred meters, and a re-entry vehicle that followed a predictable ballistic trajectory amenable to interception by systems that existed at the time. That description is accurate. It is also a description of a system that has not existed in its original form for at least 15 years. What Iran has been doing with the Shahab-3 since its initial fielding is what every competent military does with a foundational weapons platform. It has been systematically improving every performance parameter that matters while the platform remains in continuous production at scale. The liquid fuel propulsion system was progressively optimized for faster preparation time, reducing the pre-launch window from hours to under 40 minutes for the most recent variants. The re-entry vehicle was redesigned multiple times with the most current generation, incorporating a maneuvering capability in the terminal phase that introduces lateral deflection sufficient to defeat the intercept solutions computed against a non-maneuvering target. The guidance system was updated to incorporate inertial navigation quality improvements that have reduced the circular error probable from hundreds of meters to the tens of meters range in the most capable variants. Most critically, the Shahab-3 was retained and improved specifically because of a characteristic that more modern systems do not share. It is producible in very large quantities at relatively low unit cost. The Iranian Defense Industrial Base has been manufacturing Shahab-3 and its derivatives continuously for 25 years. The production tooling is mature. The supply chain is entirely domestic. The unit cost, while not publicly confirmed, is estimated by independent analysts at a fraction of the cost of the more advanced systems in Iran's inventory. 900 rounds represents a production investment that Iran's defense budget can absorb. 900 SM-3 interceptors represents an expenditure that would consume a significant portion of the U.S. Navy's entire annual procurement budget for that system. The mass employment doctrine that Iran applied on this night is not a new concept. It is the direct application of a strategic insight that Iranian defense planners have been developing in wargaming for at least a decade. That the most efficient path to defeating the U.S. Navy's Aegis ballistic missile defense system is not to build a missile that the system cannot intercept one for one, but to build enough missiles that the system cannot intercept all of them simultaneously. The mathematics of saturation are not classified. They are straightforward. Every Aegis-equipped vessel has a finite simultaneous engagement capacity. Every SM-3 interceptor battery has a finite reload time. The only question is how many rounds are required to guarantee that the number of leakers, the rounds not engaged, is sufficient to achieve mission objectives against the target. Iran's planners ran that calculation, built the required inventory over a period of years, and executed the result last night. The self-reliance dimension of this story carries a weight that I find genuinely significant from a professional military perspective. When I was in uniform, the assumption embedded in American strategic planning was that comprehensive export controls and technology denial could prevent potential adversaries from developing the military capabilities that would threaten American force projection. And that assumption was always more comfortable than correct. But the Shahab-3 program demonstrates its failure with particular clarity. Iran built this capability not by circumventing our export controls, not by stealing our technology, not by purchasing what we tried to deny them. They built it by taking what they had in the late 1990s and improving it incrementally through domestic engineering effort over 25 years. The sanctions regime that was supposed to prevent this outcome did not prevent it. It delayed it slightly and motivated the development of a completely indigenous industrial base that is now immune to supply chain interdiction. We sanctioned Iran into self-sufficiency. That is the strategic verdict that honest analysts need to confront. Part 3, Washington's silence. What the Pentagon isn't saying. I know how Washington works. I spent enough time in and around the building to understand the difference between what the institution says and what the institution knows. And right now, what the Pentagon knows and what the Pentagon is saying are separated by a distance that should concern every American citizen who is paying attention what the Pentagon is saying. Measured statements about an unprovoked Iranian attack on American naval forces, assurances that the situation is being assessed and appropriate responses are being considered, careful language about the safety and welfare of the personnel aboard the Ronald Reagan, and the standard formulation about America's commitment to its allies and partners in the region. What the Pentagon knows, that the intelligence community produced assessments in the preceding months that specifically identified the threat of a mass Shahab-3 salvo attack against carrier strike group assets in the Northern Arabian Sea operating envelope, that those assessments were weighed against the political and signaling cost of repositioning the Ronald Reagan to a less exposed station, and found insufficient to justify the optics of what would have looked like backing down in response to Iranian pressure. That the defensive architecture of the strike group was known to have a saturation threshold, that a sufficiently large Shahab-3 salvo could exceed, and that the decision to maintain the Ronald Reagan's forward operating position was made by people who understood the risk and chose to accept it for reasons that had nothing to do with military necessity and everything to do with political optics. I am not speculating about this. I am describing a decision-making pattern that I observed repeatedly in 30 years of military service, a pattern in which the institutional imperative to project confidence and resolve consistently overrides the operational imperative to make honest risk assessments and act on them. The Ronald Reagan was where it was last night because repositioning it would have sent a signal of weakness. That calculus political signal management over force protection is exactly the kind of institutional failure that costs lives. And it has just cost America its most visible symbol of naval power in the most watched theater in the world. The immediate operational consequence for Israel is severe and direct. The Ronald Reagan's air wing, approximately 70 fixed-wing aircraft, including FA-18EF Super Hornets and EA-18G Growler, electronic warfare aircraft, was the primary American strike, and air superiority asset available to support Israeli operations in the event of a major Iranian escalation. That asset is now sitting on a flight deck that cannot conduct fixed-wing operations aboard a vessel that is not moving in a threat environment that has just demonstrated it can generate the kind of anti-ship fires that make recovery operations extraordinarily dangerous. Israel was counting on American carrier aviation as a backstop. That backstop is gone. The Fifth Fleet's remaining assets, the escorts, the submarines operating in the theater, and the shore-based aviation at Al Udeid in Qatar represent a significant residual capability, but the psychological and political impact of the carrier's mission kill is not a residual capability. It is a category of damage that cannot be offset by counting the surviving assets. Aircraft carriers are not just weapons platforms. They are the physical embodiment of American security guarantees, the visible proof that Washington can project power to wherever its interests require. When that symbol is mission killed in the waters off Iran's coast, the signal transmitted to every government evaluating its relationship with American security commitments is not something that can be countered by pointing to the surviving destroyers. The congressional and domestic political fallout from this event will be significant, and I expect it to be ugly. There will be demands for investigation, legitimate ones, into the intelligence assessments that preceded the deployment the decision-making process that kept the carrier in its exposed position, and the adequacy of the defensive systems that were supposed to prevent exactly this outcome. Those investigations will eventually produce findings. Whether those findings will produce the kind of honest institutional reckoning that prevents the same mistake from being made, again, is a question to which history gives a skeptical answer. Part 4, the will behind the missile, what Iran is actually fighting for. I want to say something here that I know will be controversial because it contradicts the narrative that American political leadership has maintained about Iran for 50 years. But I have spent my career trying to understand adversaries honestly, rather than conveniently. And honest understanding requires acknowledging what motivates the people on the other side of the equation. Iran did not strike the USS Ronald Reagan because it is an irrational, terrorist-sponsoring rogue state driven by religious fanaticism and hatred of American values. That description is a political construct designed to make a complex strategic adversary easier to demonize and harder to understand. Iran struck the USS Ronald Reagan because the USS Ronald Reagan was positioned in the northern Arabian Sea as a direct instrument of military pressure against Iranian sovereignty as part of a sustained campaign that has included targeted killings of Iran's senior military commanders, systematic sabotage of Iranian industrial infrastructure, comprehensive economic warfare against the Iranian civilian population, and repeated explicit threats of military destruction from both American and Israeli officials. When I look at the strategic logic from Tehran's perspective, which is what I was trained to do, because you cannot make accurate assessments of an adversary's behavior without attempting to understand it on its own terms. I see a government that has concluded, after 50 years of attempted engagement, negotiation, and restraint, that the only language the American national security establishment responds to is demonstrated military capability deployed with the willingness to use it. The soldiers of the IRGC Aerospace Force who executed this strike are not fanatics. They are professional military people who have spent careers developing and refining a capability that they were told every year of that development their country was too primitive, too sanctioned, and too isolated to achieve. They achieved it anyway. Not because of foreign assistance, though the geopolitical environment that Russia and China have helped maintain has given Iran the strategic space to develop without facing the kind of preventive military action that might otherwise have been launched against them. And they achieved it because of the specific quality of motivation that comes from defending something you genuinely believe is worth defending at any cost. Compare that motivation to what I observe on the American side of this equation. We have a military that is genuinely capable, the best trained, best equipped, most operationally experienced force in the world by most conventional measures. But a military that has spent the last 20 years fighting wars whose strategic rationale was never convincingly explained to the people being asked to fight them, whose outcomes have consistently fallen short of the objectives stated at the outset, and whose leadership has become more practiced at managing the optics of failure than at honestly assessing and correcting its causes. The will gap between a force defending its homeland and a force projecting power in service of strategic objectives that shift with each election cycle is not something that technology, training, or logistics can close. Israel's situation in this regard is even more structurally precarious. The IDF is a capable military operating on an increasingly narrow strategic foundation. Its power projection capability depends on American resupply, American intelligence, American diplomatic protection, and American willingness to backstop its operations when they generate the kind of resistance that this conflict has generated. when the carrier that was supposed to represent that backstop is sitting mission killed in the Arabian Sea, Israel is left with a military that retains all of its tactical capability and has lost the strategic assurance that made that capability feel decisive. Tactical capability without strategic assurance is not the same thing as security. It is an expensive way of delaying a reckoning that borrowed power cannot permanently prevent. Part 5, after the Reagan, the world that comes next. I want to be honest with you about what I think comes next, not what I hope comes next, not what official Washington will say comes next, but what the strategic logic of this situation actually points toward when you reason through it without the filters of wishful thinking or institutional self-protection. The mission killed the USS Ronald Reagan is a strategic watershed in a specific and precise sense. It is the first time since the Second World War that a United States Navy carrier has been struck in combat. Every strategic calculation that any government has been making about American military power has contained as a foundational assumption the proposition that American carriers are effectively invulnerable in the threat environments in which they operate. That assumption is no longer available as a planning premise. Its removal changes the mathematics of deterrence and power projection in ways that will take years to fully work through, but whose direction is immediately clear. In Moscow, this event is being processed as validation of a strategic thesis that Russian military doctrine has maintained for years, that mass employment of relatively unsophisticated ballistic missiles against naval surface combatants represents an asymmetric approach that can defeat the world's most advanced naval air defense systems when executed at sufficient scale. Russian investment in exactly this kind of capability. The Iskander, the Kinzhal, the Zircon, has proceeded in parallel with Iranian development of the Shahab family. The operational proof of concept that Iran has just provided in the Arabian Sea will accelerate Russian confidence in applying similar doctrine in its own strategic theaters. In Beijing, the Taiwan Strait calculus has just shifted in a direction that American strategic planners will find deeply uncomfortable. The People's Liberation Army Rocket Force has maintained a large inventory of anti-ship ballistic missiles, the DF-21D and DF-26, specifically designed to execute the same kind of carrier-killing strike package that Iran just executed with Shahab-3 variants. The American deterrence of Chinese military action across the Taiwan Strait has rested significantly on the threat of American carrier aviation operating within strike range of potential conflict zones. That deterrence rested on the assumption that carriers were survivable in the threat environment. Iran just demonstrated empirically and publicly that this assumption requires revision. The strategic planners in Beijing are drawing exactly the conclusions you would expect them to draw for the broader developing world. The nations of Africa, Asia, and Latin America that have been navigating between American pressure and the aspiration for strategic autonomy. The events of this night provide a reference point of historic significance. The narrative of American military invulnerability that has underwritten the global compliance with American strategic preferences for 3 generations has just encountered its most direct challenge. Not in a theoretical assessment or a war game outcome, but in satellite imagery showing a Nimitz-class carrier listing in the Arabian Sea with its flight deck damaged and its propulsion offline. The energy markets are already reflecting the strategic implications. The northern Arabian Sea is not the Strait of Hormuz, but the demonstration that Iran can mission kill American naval assets in the broader Gulf region has introduced a risk premium into oil pricing that reflects the realistic possibility of Hormuz interdiction in a more serious escalation scenario. The strait carries approximately 20% of globally traded oil. Its closure, even for a period of days, would produce an energy price shock whose economic consequences would radiate across every import-dependent economy simultaneously. Iran's demonstrated willingness to engage American naval power at this scale is a credible signal that Hormuz interdiction is a real option in a continued escalation scenario. The multipolar world order that has been theorized and debated in academic and policy circles for 2 decades is not arriving through the patient accumulation of diplomatic agreements and multilateral institutions. It is arriving through exactly these kinds of events. Moments where the operational limits of American military primacy are demonstrated in conditions that cannot be argued away or narrative managed into irrelevance. Russia and China have spent years developing the capabilities and the relationships that position them to benefit from American strategic overextension. The events of this night are precisely the kind of development that accelerates the realization of that strategic benefit without requiring either power to take any direct action that could be characterized as aggression. I have been critical of American strategic policy for many years, critical in a specific and precise way, not in the way of someone who wishes America ill, but in the way of someone who watched American military and strategic capability squandered through institutional arrogance, political cowardice, and the systematic prioritization of comfortable narratives over honest assessments. The Ronald Reagan is mission killed this morning, not because Iran is more powerful than the United States. Iran is not more powerful than the United States in any comprehensive measure of national power. The Ronald Reagan is mission killed because a decision was made to keep it in a threat environment that the intelligence community had assessed as dangerous for reasons that had more to do with political optics than operational logic. That is the lesson I want this audience to take from this morning. Not that Iran has surpassed American military power, not that the United States is finished as a global actor, but that the gap between the military power America possesses and the strategic wisdom with which it is being employed has become so large that adversaries with far smaller resources and far more limited capabilities can exploit it to produce outcomes that would have seemed impossible a generation ago. Closing that gap requires honesty about how it opened. And honesty of that kind has been in very short supply in Washington for a very long time. 8,400 Americans are stranded in the northern Arabian Sea this morning aboard a vessel that should not have been where it was. That is the human reality behind everything I have analyzed in this video, and I want to name it plainly before I close, because the sailors and aviators and support personnel aboard the Ronald Reagan are not abstractions. They are people who went where they were ordered to go and trusted that the people who gave those orders had made honest assessments of the risks involved. That trust was not honored, and the consequences of that failure are sitting on a listing carrier deck in the Arabian Sea right now. The strategic question that follows from this morning is the one that matters most for the next decade. Does this event produce the honest institutional reckoning in Washington that would force a genuine reassessment of American strategic posture in the Middle East and beyond? Or does it produce the kind of escalatory response that trades honest analysis for the appearance of decisive action, deepening American commitment to a strategic position that has just demonstrated its unsustainability in a theater where the cost of continued overextension will be paid by more people in uniforms who deserve better decision-making from the people above them? I know which outcome history says is more likely. I am hoping to be wrong. What do you think happens next? Does Washington finally confront the strategic reality that this morning has made impossible to ignore? Or does the institutional reflex toward escalation override the evidence? Leave your assessment in the comments. This conversation is one of the most important we can be having right now. Subscribe if you are not already, and share this analysis with anyone who you think needs an honest account of what is happening in the world. I will see you in the next one.